Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
Josh Chin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts and entrepreneurs in the e-commerce industry and go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. Now, this episode is brought to you by the E-commerce Growth Hackers Facebook group. If you own or operate a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business, you're probably drowning in the sea of conflicting advice from people who may or may not have been in your shoes. So skip the noise and join the E-commerce Growth Hackers Facebook group and learn from a curated group of e-commerce founders and operators and tap into the genius of featured specialists on e-commerce growth and marketing. And the best part is it's free, at least for now. So check out the group on Facebook. That's facebook.com/groups/e-commerce growth hackers with a Z at the end, all one word. And link is also in the description in this episode. And I'll see you guys on the inside. Today's guest is Leslie Kuster. Did I get your name right?
You
Perfect.
did.
Leslie is a multiple seven-figure e-commerce brand owner whose business, Back From Bali, offers women bohemian chic clothing ethically made in Bali. The success of Back From Bali affords Leslie the life of her dreams. We'll talk a little bit about her yearly annual practice of how she maintains a balance in her life. And she's passionate about igniting and inspiring other women entrepreneurs to rise to their success and to create the financial and personal freedom that they crave and deserve. So Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Josh. I'm so happy to be here.
Leslie, let's talk a little bit about how you ended up as an entrepreneur and why e-commerce and why clothing.
So going back quite a few years, I went traveling to Indonesia and I absolutely fell in love with the experience of travel and freedom and all of that. But after the 7 months of traveling, I had to come back to New York City, which is where I was living at the time. And guess what? Get a job, right? And
Yep.
I was sitting there looking through all the different papers, which is what you did back then, to find a job. And there just was not one job I wanted. And I had literally a light bulb moment where I remembered this beautiful, colorful batik clothing that I had seen in Bali, Indonesia, when I was traveling. And I just thought, I wonder if I jump back on a plane and I wonder if I go back and bought clothing off the street, I wonder if I can sell it. And my desire to never work in a company again, to never get into an elevator and go up to the 20th floor, to never get in a New York City subway in order to get to the office was so strong in me that I literally did it. And I jumped back on a plane with a big duffel bag and I hit the streets of Bali, which, as you know, in Singapore, it is really hot.
Thank you, man.
And I just bought and bought and bought and brought the clothing back and ended up just doing markets and street fairs. And that is how my business was launched. And that's the reason why it launched.
That is crazy. So that is that feels impulsive of all things, impulsive. And but what that tells me is that you leaned into your I suppose intuitions and knowing that you probably wouldn't be happy in being in a job that you may not like. Coming from my background and my culture in Asia, that's a really difficult thing to do. Being in Singapore, there's a set path where people kind of take. You go to school, you go to university, and then you get a job. And 60% of my peers end up in a bank or a financial institution of some sorts, because that's kind of how Singapore is. It's a financial hub. It's tough to kind of veer away from that. It's getting easier, but how do you think about, and when you first got started, how do you think about that, and for people listening who may be on that cusp of that decision, what's your advice?
I mean, listen, it was the best thing I've ever done. But the trouble is you don't know where you're going before you kind of jump off, right? You like jump
Yeah.
off and like the unknown, and you have no idea. Like I had no idea what I would buy. I had no idea if it would sell. I had no clue at all. But the truth is that decision that I made brought me to the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. And the thing is, we have to have the courage to make these sort of choices. If you don't have the courage to make these sort of choices, you end up just kind of living somebody else's life. Like you were saying, 60% of your friends are just like kind of doing the same thing. But when you have the courage to make choices that, like you said before, also are intuitive, that I followed my hunch, I followed my greatest desire, which was to not work in an office building and get a job. And because of following that, it brought me to the next step. So the opportunities, like on the other side of that, on the other side of the safe job, on the other side of doing what everybody else is doing, is phenomenal. And yeah, that's what I really encourage. It's was easier for me personally because both of my parents are entrepreneurs. So I actually came from a family that did not really value getting a banking job. We didn't really value getting, the safe job with the perfect house. So I kind of had that as a role model, which has made it easier for me to kind of go off track.
That's really interesting, because one of the early advice that I've gotten personally was, well, I'm going to butcher this, but I don't even remember who it came from, but it was something along the lines of, when you don't know where you're going, look for the tallest mountain or hill that you could climb and go towards that peak. As you approach that peak, a higher peak will emerge and it will present itself. And then you can aim for a higher peak. And you don't have to worry about what's the tallest mountain that you can climb and that big, grandiose mission or vision that you need to have when starting a business. Just get started, look for the highest mountain you can climb, and move in that direction. And the rest is going to reveal itself
I
as
love
you go.
that. That's a great example and a great analogy. And my dad also would always just say, like, just do it, just do it. And that was like his favorite thing to say. And that is really what you have to do. So when you have an idea for a business, when you're thinking of doing e-commerce, when you're thinking of like doing something that's off the track, really just do it, because it will then lead you to the next thing. And it's also really important to get guidance, though, which is, I saw you have your Facebook group. It's really important to get the guidance from people who've come before you and know how to advise you as well. And there's so much help out there.
So talking about kind of getting to success, and this is part of what you're passionate about, and what do you feel is the current status quo when it comes to female entrepreneurs trying to make it in the space, and especially in e-commerce, where I think it's getting better, but it's a very male-dominated space, in my opinion, based on the kind of the circle of friends and network that I've built. Is there a barrier, and what's stopping more female entrepreneurs from stepping up and becoming entrepreneurs, investing?
There's like a crazy statistic that I'm still like going, is this really true? And it goes like this, that only 10% of women entrepreneurs who are business owners do more than $100,000 a year in annual. Only 10%. That means 90% of all women business owners do less than 100,000. So what is like going on there? And it's one of my passions, is to help other women entrepreneurs, especially in the e-commerce space, to change that. But there's a lot of different mindset reasons for that, I believe. And part of it is like, as you said, it's been so like male dominated. I mean, when I first went to my first Amazon conference, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I must have been like one of 10 women out of like hundreds of men. So
Yeah.
it can be really super intimidating, but it's definitely changing. However, it is still definitely mostly male, especially in e-commerce, and especially like the big people who are teaching Amazon or teaching e-commerce. It's still very much male. So I think for women can be a little inhibited by that. But I think one of the reasons that women are not as successful financially in business, it doesn't even have to do with e-commerce or not, is because of their not being comfortable around money and making money. And it's very common for women to say things like, I would do my business even if I made no money, or I'm not a money person, or money's not that important to me. And it's really rare to hear a guy say that, right?
Yeah, it's true.
But it's kind of common to hear a woman say that. And I think it's a lot to do with a perception of how a female or how a woman is supposed to look or be or act or whatever, and saying things like, I want money, I love money, I'm gonna make $1 million, this is what I'm into, I'm building up a big business. It's not considered very feminine in terms of cultural traditional ideas.
Right.
And this is really hurting women a lot. And so I'm kind of on a mission to give women the freedom to unlock the door to be able to like stand up and shout, I love money and I want money. And God damn it, I'm building my business and I'm going to do $1 million because it's fun. So I think this is really what we need to talk about it more and give women the opportunity to be comfortable around money.
This reminds me of a guest that we've had on the show, Kara Golden from Hint Water. Her story is exactly that. In her book, Undaunted, she talks about how she had to kind of fight against the status quo and the cultural norms of in the male dominated space, a very, very male dominated space in FMCG beverage space. Especially in the early days when she just got started and having to go through that, it's incredible. I strongly recommend reading her book about her story. But yeah, I mean, to your point, Leslie, it's on one hand, I think it is getting better. I think more people are talking about it, and I think e-commerce specifically in the land of business is leveling the playing field, especially with tools like Shopify and Amazon. Anyone can get started now, and now it's in my opinion, less a structural thing and more a mindset and cultural thing. So tools are there. Now it's just about learning how to get the right sequence in place.
Yes. And mindset is everything. And it really, you have to, first of all, you have to really want it. So listen, anytime you're building a business, it's not easy. Okay. Anybody who tells you it's easy to build a business is not really telling you the whole story. Yeah. It's not really easy. And you need to be really invested in doing it. And so this desire to want it, to have like a burning desire to want to build something, to want to create the wealth, the money, to want to bring something exciting out into the world. Or in my case, this burning desire not to go to the office, not to go into an elevator, not to do whatever it is. However way you want to approach it, that burning desire of wanting it has to be really, really strong. And that is one of the most important keys to success. And that's something I talk about in my book, which is called 7 Keys to 7 Figures.
And that's coming out in fall next year.
Exactly. Fall 2022.
Perfect. And so that's what, have you decided on the title? Is it going to be Money and Freedom? or is it going to be
It's
7
going
keys?
to be 7 keys to 7 figures, money and freedom for women entrepreneurs.
Beautiful. What can you share about what's one key that you could share with us today?
Yeah, I'm going to share key number 2, which is one of the biggest secrets to success, and that has to do with focus. And I'll just like tell you my story and how I like experienced that. I was an entrepreneur for a really long time, but I wasn't a successful entrepreneur for a really long time, even though I actually had 2 businesses. I had my Back From Bali business, which is what I have now, and that's the women's clothing company where I'm importing into the US. And I had another business called Girl Power, which is that I basically was an empowerment group for young girls who were like 7 to 13 years old. And so I would do the importing business. I would do Back From Bali. And what would happen is I would focus on Back From Bali and sales would go up and things would improve and things like that. And then Girl Power would start to go down. And then I would run over to Girl Power and I would send out more emails and I would create another course and I would do some networking and things like that. And that business started to go up. And guess what happened? Back From Bali started to go down. And I ran these businesses like this for way too many years. Okay. And because of that, neither business had a revenue of over 100,000. Between both of them, they were under 100,000 in revenue because I wasn't focused. And one day, and I really literally mean one day, I said, enough is enough. And I want to make more money and I want to be more successful. And I knew I had it in me to do it. And I realized in that moment, the mistake I was making was by not focusing. And it's something that, in particularly women, believe that they have the ability to multitask. But the truth is, humans can't. We cannot, our brains do not function where we can think about this and think about something at the exact same time. Even though we think we could do this and pick up this and do this and this, the truth is we can't. And so I made a decision in that moment that I was going to let go of one of the businesses. And then it was a question, which one do I let go of? Is it going to be the Back From Bali or is it going to be the other? And then became a huge struggle inside of me was Back From Bali is maybe greedy and it's just about me and it's, superficial. It's just about women's clothing, where the other is helping women and young girls. And it's much more, supportive and all of that. And I just had a gut feeling to let go of Girl Power and focus on Back From Bali. And that's what I did. And literally, I let it go within a few weeks. I closed it down, focused 100% on my one business. And within a year, my revenue had doubled.
Amazing story. And in your, in your experience of working with female entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, and consulting with entrepreneurs, what has been the number one problem that you see entrepreneurs face when, as they embark on that scaling phase? Now that they've found a focus, you have kind of found your niche or the business that they want to spend the majority of the time on, and they're picking up speed. What's next? And what's that thing that's blocking them from hitting that first 7-8 figures?
The first one for sure is mindset, and whether they think they can or can't do it, or whether they think they're, the type of person to do it, or whether they came from a family that was successful or not. So it is 100% mindset about what you think you can or can't do. And that you're not smart, that you don't know about e-commerce, that you don't know how to manage an Excel data sheet, that you don't know how to download Amazon reports and what they are, that, Amazon in particular, that's my business, super data driven, right?
Yeah.
And so you you start a business, you start an Amazon business, people have this idea, they put things up and things will sell. It doesn't quite work that way, as you know. And so all of these mindset things start happening with someone starting a new business in that way, of whether they're smart enough, whether they're technical enough, whether they know those things. And in my own case, I had no tech background at all. And so everything is learnable. And this is something I really want to tell women and women entrepreneurs who are considering starting their own business or considering going into e-commerce. Everything is learnable. And actually, it's not even that difficult. It's just that you need to learn things and you need to get the guidance of how to do it. And that is one of the other keys to success that's in the book, which has to do with what I call becoming an unquenchable learner. And just as you were sharing with me before we started recording, how you really dove into learning and learning, email marketing and all kinds of things. This is what you need to do as an entrepreneur. You need to become humble and realize first of all, you don't know what you don't know, because how can you possibly know what you don't know? Yeah. And you need to really be like a humble servant and be open-minded to learning all the time. So I've been in this business for a long time now. I'm always learning. I'm always listening to podcasts, reading new books. I still to this day work with my own consultant. E-commerce consultant. So there's constantly learning and growing. And that is absolutely one of the keys to success.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about key number 7. So I'm personally interested in, and I believe that's called empty time.
Yeah, empty time.
Leslie, tell us a little bit more about what that means.
So I have been going to a retreat center in the hills of New Mexico we're talking about 30 years, where I take summers off for the most part, anywhere between 5 to 8 weeks. And I go to a retreat where they do yoga and meditation, healthy eating. It's all vegetarian. We live super simply, have a tent and a little cabin. And what I noticed is that while I was really building this business, in particular in the last 10 years, I didn't stop doing this, and I didn't stop going to the retreat, and I didn't stop taking time off. And I would work while I was at the retreat. I would say I would work for around about 5 to maybe 7 hours a week. Okay. Not a day, a week. And I noticed that even though I was doing that, my business was still growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And I believe that it continues to grow and did grow all these years because of me taking this, what I call empty time. So I think what happens is when we don't take downtime, empty time, quiet time, whatever you want to call it, then we're always following our to-do lists, right? We're always following our goal, our to-do list, and what we have to do next and next and next and next and next. And the trouble with that is we don't get in touch with what we really want and what is really, really important, because you're just too busy doing the stuff and checking off your things you need to do. You have no time at all to reflect on what it is you really want to feel in your life, what do you want your business to look like. And unless you take empty time and downtime, you don't ever hear what's going on inside of yourself. And when you have the time to get quiet and to go for a walk or journal or go on retreats like I do, then you get really clear on what is important to you, how you want to live your life, what kind of business you want to build, how much money you want to be making, how much vacation time you want, how many hours you want to work a week. All of those things start to become really clear instead of running after your to-do list all the time. So I really believe that it is from stopping that we become more successful.
Leslie, tell me a little bit more about your experience at the retreat. So do you let go of everything that's happening in your business and you kind of take that 5, 8 weeks off completely? Or are you still
No,
working
I'm working about 5 to maybe 7, 8 hours a week, so let's
right?
just call
Yep.
it like an hour a day. So an hour a day
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
that I'm working, checking in with email and making sure, my VA is doing whatever they're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing. But other than that, I am spending time there. We're doing meditation. We do a lot of almost like Tai Chi movements with breath. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
movement with breath, dancing, and living very, very simply, living pretty much in the forest. And just having like that simplicity where you're not getting dressed up and putting on makeup all the time and, running to a restaurant and meeting with your
Yeah.
friends and all those kind of things puts you in a state where you connect with your higher self. And it puts you in a state where you connect with the precious pearl inside of you that can give you guidance. And the only way to find that precious pearl is to be quiet. You can't hear it when there's too much noise.
The the monkey brain inside of me is telling me, and I believe this resonates with a lot of, I suppose, for lack of a better, type A personality types, the kind that are, I suppose, uh, anxious all the time. And I was talking to you about this before you hit record, but um, people whose minds are never at rest, right? How do you stop? It's one thing to be like to be quiet and to be present and to listen, but it's another to be able to step away from your business and to to stop the worrying and that chatter in your mind. How do you think about that? What's your philosophy behind?
You have to get in a place where you feel bliss. That's what it is. So you need to identify the things in your life that make you feel happy, simply happy. Okay. Whatever it is, whether it's like drinking like a great cup of tea
Yeah.
or holding an animal or staring at a tree or smelling a flower or writing or whatever these things are, there's something in your life that makes you feel blissful. There's in everybody's life, they can
Hmm.
access a feeling of bliss. And the key is to experience a feeling of bliss and happiness. And when
Hmm.
you do that, even if it's for 10 seconds, the monkey mind, as you said, will slow down and you'll be like, oh, I actually felt good for 10 seconds. Do you see?
Yeah. And now you do more of that.
Yeah. And then you do more of it. So it's really not a question of, okay, I'm going to be a meditator now and I'm going to sit down for a half hour every morning and my brain is going to not do anything because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I've actually been meditating for 30 years and I still struggle with thoughts in my head. So that doesn't always work. And for many people, that never works actually.
Yeah.
But what does work is knowing who you are and knowing what it is that makes you feel joyful, simple, joyful, whatever it is, playing or, playing ball or whatever it is that you do. You like to dance, you like to ski, you like to do whatever it is that you love to do. And it's connecting with more joy in your life. And when you connect with more joy in your life, you will notice that you don't feel such anxiety and your mind will not be going like, what do I have to do next? And I have to, and start to kind of get into that whole downward
That's
spiral
cycle.
again.
Yeah.
You'll stop downward spiraling. So the key is to, first of all, know what you like, know
Yeah.
what brings you a sense of peace and bliss, and then make sure that you do some of that each day.
Now that knowing part is where I'm struggling with. At the risk of diving super deep into this rabbit hole, but I think it's important. How do you know when you're happy, or not even happy, but how do you identify joy or blissfulness? That makes sense.
If you can have like a memory, if there's any memory that you've had in your entire life that made you feel blissful or joyful.
Hmm.
Like, was there a vacation you went on? Was there a moment as a kid? Was there a Sunday that you did something and you felt happy about
Right.
it?
Yeah. Okay.
Where was, so you try to dig up a memory,
Right.
and when you dig up in a memory, it's going to actually bring up an emotion.
Yeah.
And the emotion is going to be contentment. It's going to be happiness. It's going to be joy. It's going to feel light. It's not going to feel dark. It's going to feel kind of peaceful. And so
Right.
you want to kind of remember moments in your life where you have accessed this. And when you access this happiness, okay,
Yeah.
just simple happiness, simple joyfulness, simple that, and you start to remember, oh yeah, I felt that, last week, or I felt that last year, or I felt that when I was 5 years old, or whatever it is, and you start to bring up that memory again, then it will remind you and it will give you that emotion again. Does that
That's
make
good
sense?
advice.
Does
That
that
makes
help?
sense. Yeah. That helps. That makes sense. And I think that, on top of that, it might be not just from a spiritual point of view, but just the practice of mindfulness, and meditation could help. I'm just kind of, this is just a reminder to myself in a way, of just being a little bit more aware of how I'm experiencing life versus what life is happening to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if you can connect with yourself. So what does that mean? Connecting with yourself. Connecting with yourself means having a relationship with you, okay? With you, not with someone else, or not with your computer, or not with your phone, and not with another person, but having a relationship with you. And if you can have a moment in the day where you have a relationship with yourself, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling happy, or I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling hungry, or I'm feeling whatever it is, you start to create a relationship with yourself. And when you start to have a relationship with yourself, then that continues. It kind of grows. When you don't have any relationship with yourself, then it's really hard to find one, right? I
Mm.
mean, it's just
Yeah.
like having a relationship with like a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or whoever it is. When you put time into that relationship, something happens with it, often can go in a good direction, or it can go in a bad direction, but it's
Yeah.
going in some direction. And the same thing with yourself. When you put effort and time into a relationship with yourself, and that means spending time with yourself,
Yeah.
writing, thinking, being alone, going for a walk, it always has to do with being alone. It's
Mm.
never with others at all. It's always inside yourself. And when you start to have that relationship with yourself, then that starts to open up kind of a positive relationship, that this in self person, this person that you walk around with all the time, actually has wisdom inside. And you start to
Mm.
connect with that wisdom. And maybe that wisdom says things like, go outside and breathe some fresh air, and breathe in 5 breaths.
Yeah.
Maybe that wisdom says, put the computer away for this moment. It's not connecting, isn't? You're having a hard time. Wi-Fi is not working, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
shut the screen down and open up the window and just breathe. So
Yeah.
that's called connecting with yourself. You're listening to these signals.
I love that. That's great advice. Leslie, aside from Seven Keys to Seven Figures, your book, what are some other books or material that you advise entrepreneurs read, especially
Yeah.
moving into 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, I love to read. So one of my favorite books I read recently is called Playing Big by Tara Mohr, Mohr. Great book for
Mm,
women entrepreneurs. Talks a lot about mindset and actually talks about creating, and I think she calls it an inner mentor. So, like what we were just talking about in terms of getting some guidance from inside, she calls it an inner mentor and actually
right.
creating a relationship with yourself and your own inner mentor. So, I love that book. I'll just share two more books. The other book that I love is a classic, which is Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. Have you ever read
Mhm.
it?
Oh yeah,
It, yeah, I mean that's
yeah,
just the classic mindset book that
yeah.
absolutely everybody should read. And then the third book that really changed my business is called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Ah,
And Profit First is it's a financial book, and it teaches you basically creating different buckets so that you're always paying yourself first. So this was a game changer for me. So you basically are always paying yourself first. You are then have the money left over to pay your operations and things like that. So it has a great story, and I'll just briefly say it. Mike Michalowicz had big businesses. He was doing multiple million, tens of millions in revenue, and he had no money. Okay, he made no money, and he had to tell his wife and his 9-year-old daughter this during dinner one day that he literally was broke, even though
hmm.
he had multiple, 7-figure businesses actually at the time. And his daughter went upstairs to her room and she brought her piggy bank down to him and said, "Here, daddy, you can have my money." And
Ah,
he said this was like such a humbling moment for him. And he realized he needed to do something different. And he started to really dive into the money, the finances, the profitability, because we all talk about top line revenue, but the truth is it's our net revenue, the
that
money that you
makes yeah,
actually are making that actually makes the difference in our
yeah.
lives. And he started to just focus on that number, and he created a program called Profit First. And I implemented that in my business many years ago. Absolute game changer. And that's another book I really recommend.
I love it. And Mike's the one who wrote the pumpkin plan, right?
Exactly. Exactly. He's written several business books.
And what I love about his books is that it's not a long read. It's concise. It's like just the right amount of information and the right stories to get a point across. Um, Great recommendation, Leslie. For people listening who are interested in connecting with you and learn more about your consulting business and your new book, where's the best place to connect with you?
Definitely go to my website, which is lesliekuster.com. I have a free ebook there called 7 Mistakes Most Women Entrepreneurs Make and What to Do Instead. So definitely check that out. And of course, you can find me also on Instagram too at Leslie Kuster Official. I would love to hear from any of your listeners, and I'm here to really help other women be successful too.
Love it. Thank you so much, Leslie. And as usual, links are going to be in the show notes below. You can go to chronos.agency/podcast for show notes. Leslie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.